So the first thing that I want to do is to thank you, all of you, for your participation and in making this film, because it's super important. When I saw it come through, I was so excited and so thrilled to see a film like this being made and being really real about gun violence and what's happening, and especially in New Orleans. And I also wanted to say to all of you, Freedia, sorry for all your losses, personal losses, and the losses in your community, Dr. Wyatt. And it's a terrible tragedy, all these things that continue to happen. But thank you for making the film and for being here and being a part of Outfest today.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you for having us.
Of course. I'm going to be real honest with you, Freedia. I was embarrassed and I changed the picture behind me because I had this giant big Freedia poster from back in the day with the Zodiac.
Oh, that was one of my favorites.
I was just like, oh, I can't have that like behind me while I get on.
Why not? That's a hot poster. You talking about with all the birthdays? Yes, I love it. All the different size asses.
All the asses, and you signed it back then for me. It was at the Echo in LA.
Oh yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But so I've been following you for a long time. I ran away to New Orleans when I was 16 from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So it's sort of been my second home for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, so thank you for the movie. And so I guess I wanted to start with the idea that, you know, a lot of times gun violence and the issues around gun violence get conflated in this country. It's an epidemic, especially I mean, it's an epidemic across the country, but we have these issues of, you know, mentally ill and dangerous people able to get guns and go shoot children in schools and workplaces and things like that. And then there's the violence police, you know, killing Black men, killing people in general. And then there's just the violence because there are so many guns in our community, in the way that people are being taught and raised, and different kinds of masculinities and things like that, and how we prove our masculinity in different communities. And so, you know, there's all these different parts of the way gun violence is happening and the way it gets talked about. And I know, Chris, you've written a lot about the way in which, okay, we hear about a mass shooting, but we don't hear about what's happening in Chicago and New Orleans and different communities every single day. So I'm just wondering, what are the things that you think can be done by the politicians? You know, we're coming up on this election, and community leaders such as yourself, Dr. Wyatt, what can we do to help make change, do you think? You know, besides, you know, you made this fabulous movie that's going to go out into the world. You know, is there a way that you think that politicians can make changes for us and community leaders? Do you see something going in the right direction? Do you hear about things that are working out well in the communities that you're in? Or, you know, I know it's kind of a dark time, you know, and I think a lot of times we feel a lot of hopelessness at times, but I'm just wondering, you know, what your thoughts are about, you know, what changes do you think people can do? What can we personally do to help make change in these communities around gun violence?
Well, I can start. For me, I think on a national level that we need to change some of the gun laws. That's first and foremost. We need to change some of the laws that affects the communities, that affects carrying of weapons, that's, you know, allowing all of these weapons to come into our neighborhoods. And it starts with our leadership. And then it trickles down to us as a community doing community efforts to get the guns off the streets. It is a police effort. It's efforts at home. It's all around effort for everybody to be involved in. But on a national level, we definitely need to start with the gun laws and changing the laws, how these guns are distributed and how easy it is to buy a gun and how easy it is for people to break in trains and get guns off of them, and just all of the different things relating to getting the guns on the streets. We need to change any of that stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm. Did anybody else want to chime in on that question?
Sure. So when we think about policy, I always think about policy is always created without the people who are most impacted at the table. And so think about what they can do. I think first of all, we need to address the systemic issues and why these things are happening. We live below the poverty line in New Orleans. We can't even afford decent housing. Minimum wage is still deplorable. And so when you think about the systemic issues, when you can't afford decent housing, you can't afford to not miss work, you can't afford to get sick. These are the things that perpetuate themselves, that create opportunity for violence to run prevalent in our communities. And I think what we're seeing now is just a manifestation of literally leaving an entire group of people behind economically. And so we're struggling just to make basic ends meet, and we're resorting to violence to try to solve some of the things that on a holistic level shouldn't be things that regular folk have to solve, like where they're going to get their next meal from. And these are gainfully employed people still turn to violence to try to figure things out. And so this is not just about criminality, this is about, and I think when we address the reason why people are struggling to merely survive in New Orleans or in any community where economic disparity is running rampant, I think until we address the systemic issues, we're going to continue to see violence play out in ways that we're uncomfortable with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and so going from that sort of big bird's eye view down digging down in, I really loved what you said in the film, Freedia, and respect what you said about focusing on helping and changing one person at a time. And then if you can't help one person, how are you going to help change everything else? A larger group. And it's just a philosophy that I sort of live by. I also try and tell my students and that I'm teaching, because they get real overwhelmed because they want to change things and they want to make big changes really fast. And I try and say, one thing at a time, focus on one thing that you can do, right? And don't get overwhelmed. But with that, can I ask, since the film's been completed, is there any update on Devin Walker? Are you still a part of his life? And are there other kids or organizations that any of you are all currently working with, whether in New Orleans or elsewhere?
Dr. Wyatt?
Hey, I got it, Free. So yeah, Free is literally a huge part of Devin's life. I'm kind of the vessel that tells her what's going on with him. At last, Devin recently had a court date, like this time last year. And I actually was able to talk to the judge and let her know that there were people such as Freedia, such as myself, who care about Devin and he would see to it that whatever the judgment was, we would make certain that he had a community around him to rally around him to make sure that he's okay. So currently he's paying the price for a lot of the charges that we saw in the documentary. So instead of going to prison, they actually sent him to what is considered like a boot camp style of incarceration, where he can still have school, but he can actually get himself away from the environment that is causing him to fall down into those cracks. And so every time there's an update on Devin, I make sure I shoot Freedia a text and just let her know what's going on, because if it were not for Freedia, I don't think that we would have made the strides that we made with Devin and the opportunities that she presented for him. You know, even with the music, Freedia offered him an opportunity to get in the studio. And I think just that opportunity made him want to do better and make better choices, because the goal was, if you start to do better and follow the rules of school and everybody that in the rules of your.
We lost her.
You know, that with Devin, and he's currently paying the price for some bad decisions, but I think all in all, he's going to come out a better child on the end of it.
That's good. That's good to hear. He seems like a real sweet kid, you know, that just gotten caught up in some terrible things. Had some terrible things happen to him, like you had said, the trauma, you know, starts young. Well, you had mentioned bringing him into the studio, and this is a question I think for both of you really is, you know, Dr. Wyatt, you're an educator, a social justice lawyer, and I'm wondering about music in schools and the power of music in general, and how you both see that as something that can change this or be a part of the change. Can music do something, and can musicians do something, or just bringing music back into the school? I'm a musicologist, that's what I'm a professor of. So I'm a big, like, we need more music everywhere.
Well, for me, music definitely is an outlet that can help a lot of kids. When I was growing up, we still had music. We still had choir. We still had a lot of children involved in band. And I think that was my outlet of being able to stay out of trouble, to stay involved in something that I felt like I was a community and a part of. So I definitely think that more music into the schools can help the children in so many ways. Music helps feed the soul and helps to take their mind to a whole different place, into a whole different lane. So I'm definitely down for more music into the schools because, like I said, music can help in so many different directions. And if you have the right teachers and the right staffing and just all around the right community behind you to support what you're doing musically, I think that, you know, the kids can be way more involved in just doing something positive and something creative to keep them out of trouble. You know, a lot of times I wanted to be in music and in drama, and, you know, I wanted to be on student council and just everything involved with things to keep me active and to keep me out of trouble. And we need more things like that for, you know, even homemaking. I was able to cook in school and learn how to cook, you know, fun things that kept them interested. And a lot of that stuff has been pulled out.
Yeah, home ec, right? I learned how to sew really badly in school back in the day. They definitely.
Well, at least you learn. Some people can't thread a needle, you know.
I can sew a button on still. That's about it. But yeah, and so and Dr. Wyatt, what do you think about this? Because I know it's, you know, since I'm 48. I guess I'm saying that publicly. When I was in school, I went to public school, and I had choices to be in band and music and marching band and orchestra and choirs and all the things that Freedia's talking about, and also being in such a musical city like New Orleans. You know, is there a movement to bring the music back into public schools and to help kids through that, or do you think that that's kind of like still really low on the totem pole of what's needed in our education system?
I think there are different organizations like the Roots of Music. They're embedded in different schools, but just holistically in terms of our entire.
It's good.
I think music is extremely instrumental. I think the messaging in music is important. When you listen to Freedia's music, a lot about it is upbeat, a lot of it is lively. And so I think not just wanting music, but being very particular about the types of music that we engulf our children with. I think messaging is important, what they hear in music, how they see themselves in music. But I think a large, like with Devin, music was his outlet. He loves to drum. And that's what I think gravitated Freedia toward him, because she saw instantly the talent that he had just with a bucket and some sticks. And so he's very creative. And a lot of our children's talents are overlooked because at first they look at behavior and they just toss them to the side, and they never try to figure out why they're acting the way they're acting, why these things are happening. And until you get to the root cause of what has them acting out, you're never going to treat them like the children that they are. He's a beautiful kid. He's just had a rough go at life. And I think just giving him opportunity and showing that you care about him can change the trajectory of where he's going. So I definitely am a proponent of music, and definitely a proponent of Big Freedia. And I'm going to continue to tell her all the time how grateful I am for her, because it's not many people that make it in New Orleans and still try to do something for New Orleans. She doesn't have to be here. She's choosing to be here. She's choosing to make a difference. And that means a lot to me. And so that's why every single time I get an opportunity to thank her and to check on her and to lift her up, I try to do that, because she doesn't have to do what she's doing. It's because she cares. And her caring is big for somebody of her stature for the city of New Orleans.
Charles, what made you want to get involved in this as a executive producer? Did you know everybody? Is it that, I've read a lot of your op-eds and things like that around everything from gun violence to politics. So what was it that drew you to this film?
Well, Freedia and the guys at World of Wonder had already produced a film that they sent to me, and they called me and said, we just think we need some more. We need to add a broader perspective to the film. I thought it was great, as I told Freedia, I thought it was great already. But it was very particular to New Orleans, and they just wanted a bit more scope. And they asked me, how could you do that? And I said, okay, this is, the things that they're describing in the film, I am lucky that I have not had to deal with personally. And so I didn't want to step on that in any way. I thought it was brilliant to have that kind of micro view. But it was, I thought, important to add the historical part of it, and also the kind of national part of it. And so that was my kind of discussion with them, and that became my involvement in the film.
Okay. So do you know anything about, or do any of you know anything about, because this is something I was going to ask Chris, but I wasn't here, it's fine if you don't, about why why the New Orleans police didn't want to participate in the film, but also I was confused with the guys that put up the cameras around New Orleans. Are they not the police? Are they a private company that puts those cameras up around the city?
I actually don't know the answer to that. Does anyone else know the answer to that?
I think you're
Freedia, you're muted.
The guy who puts up the camera is a former police, and he works directly with the New Orleans Police Department to, they have feed to all of his surveillance. So if something happens, they can get to the footage pretty quickly. I'm not certain why the New Orleans police did not want to participate in the film. We reached out several times to them, and we just kept getting denied. We were thinking that it was something good for the community and something that the police should have been involved, just to give their point of view and their side of the story, and just to kind of let the community know that we have their support. And unfortunately, we were unable to get them. I know it's a lot of change that you have to go through to get that type of approval, because, there probably was police that wanted to do it and be involved, but it comes from the higher power. And, unfortunately, we didn't have them.
Yeah. All right. Well, and just to that point about the cameras, how do you feel? I saw the benefit of those cameras. We saw it in action in the film. But in general, what's your feeling about having cameras all around your city and being observed in that kind of way?
It's a little scary, knowing that you're being watched all the time. But hey, the world is being watched. The satellites are watching us all the time. So for me, it also feels like we need it, because so much stuff happens so quickly, and a lot of times we don't have the proper resources to find out what's going on or what may have happened. So it's a hand-in-hand thing. Sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm being watched too much. And on the other hand, you feel like we need this, because if something happened, we have the resources to be able to pull the footage to see exactly what happened or what person may have did this particular thing. So I'm on the fence about that, but I'm very much wanting to get things resolved and to get a lot of these crimes dealt with. So I'm definitely in support of the cameras. You just have to remember that cameras are watching.
Yeah, I've thought about it a number of times being there. It's like, you know, you want to go make out with somebody in an alleyway or something when you're walking through the city. And you're like,
well, girl, you better hope the neighbors is not the neighbors are not recording with you on the iPhone, because baby, people are watching.
But just to piggyback on what Freedia said, New Orleans Police Department, they're under a federal consent decree right now because of this federal eye and how they handle individuals and just the arrest rate that they had going on, and a lot of complaints. And so I know that they're already being watched, and I think they're just apprehensive about doing anything else that puts another eye on the department. I'm not sure if that played a part in why they wouldn't participate in the documentary, but I do know I worked on a federal consent decree. So I do know it's a catch-22 for the police department. On one hand, a lot of folk like it because they feel like if they're being federally watched, it'll entice them to do better on their jobs. But then it's just like Freedia said, it's just the idea of being watched 24/7. And, you know, that's an uncomfortable situation. But as we sit here, Freedia, I don't know if you got the alert, but I was just informed that a 13-year-old was just shot and that person is in critical condition. And so it's just a never ending thing. And I'm hopeful that one of the cameras so we could at least know what we're dealing with and how to go about some result for that family. So cameras are good in most instances, and for the people committing crimes, I definitely know they want them to go away fast. So I don't, like Free said, it's a catch-22. They're good, and then they're just like Big Brother. They're always watching. So
yeah. Do they have those in Atlanta? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know actually. I just moved here from New York, and they have them everywhere in kind of tourist spots, every possible angle.
Yeah,
I'm more than certain every city has them, especially in their more popular tourist areas, and you know where a lot of bars and different stuff is. I'm more than sure every city and state has them. You know, New Orleans have them up and down Bourbon. So any corner around the French Quarters, anywhere around that, you're definitely on camera.
yeah. Well, so I'm wondering, we see in the film some of the friends that you've lost, like Messi Maya and Magnolia Shorty, and towards the end of last month, of Pride Month, like just within 9 days, between June 25th, I think, and it was like July 3rd, 9 days, 6 Black trans women were found murdered, two in Louisiana near Baton Rouge. And I know the film focuses again mostly on the community in New Orleans, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about the growth of violence against Black trans women and gender nonconforming individuals in the country in general, is one part of it. And then I'm also wondering if you're still concerned about your own safety, and do you still carry a gun in New Orleans because you're concerned about your own safety, or has that increased or decreased for you since you were shot, and since more people, this keeps continuing to happen in the community?
So for me, I'm definitely in support of the community that I represent, and for all of these trans women that have been harmed. My heart goes out to their families and their friends and loved ones. And it's a very sad situation that we are constantly dealing with, and that we need to get a grips on, and that we need community support once again, and government support. It's happening, as Dr. Wyatt just said, it's happening not just to trans, it's not happening just to Black young guys, it's happening to young girls, kids. It is just out of control all over the world. And I think that it has to start once again with our government, but the community is what really is going to make a difference. Like, you know, back then when we were growing up, when we were young, it was community efforts happening. And if you did something where you were young, your mom knew about it from the neighbors down the street and the people across the street. We need those community efforts once again to come back together as a community and help each other out, because when one is affected by it, we're all affected by it. no matter if we know them or not. And a lot it just has to change. We have to keep on changing pushing for change and pushing for protection for the LGBTQ community, for all communities, especially for trans women, because a lot of times people look at them as outcasts and look at them as just being different and want to, profile them in a way where they want to harm them. And it's just not right. It's time for a change, and it's going to happen it needs to happen on every level, from our leaders to community to family, friends, all around. And for me, far as carrying a gun, no, I don't carry a gun no more. A lot of times I do be nervous about just living in New Orleans. Things happen so fast, and people get into confrontation so fast over the littlest, smallest thing. It could be something like driving or looking at someone, or stepping on someone's shoe, or the smallest thing can make people go off. So sometimes I am nervous, a little bit, but for the most part, I don't mess with nobody. I be me. I be jolly when I go out into the public. I try to have a positive spirit and try to show love. Even when I see situations sometimes getting out of hand, I try to step in those situations and to calm the situation down. And most times it do work, and I make the people go their separate ways. So, a lot of times I'm just stepping out on faith and hoping that I don't get hurt in the process. But a lot of times I do feel nervous in my own home and feel like I still should have a gun, being who I am and being that I've stepped to the next level in my life and in my career. But I just trust God and trust, that I will be safe and be protected.
I hope you are, and I think you will be.
Can I just add to the part though, the trans issue, because I don't think the trans violence issue is separate from the rest of the violence. I think that society allows harm to people that it devalues and that it thinks are disposable. And that is Black men, that is Black women, that is trans people, that is the entire LGBT spectrum. If you are not deemed to be of value, and I think that devaluation trickles down, that we all get bathed in that poison, right? And so we then start to devalue each other. And so that you see that violence become community violence because we're not valuing your life as well. And so all of that comes out of this kind of poison of there's a hierarchy to humanity, and some people at the top of it, and some of you don't matter, and you're down here. And so if harm comes to you, and so be it. Somehow you courted that by being who you are, by behaving the way you do it, instead of saying, every one of you is a human. Every one of you has the capacity to love and be loved. Every one of you cries when something is funny, and you cry and you laugh when something funny, and cry when you're hurt. You are a human being. Let's find what it is that's hurting you, and let's try to remedy that. That's the difference, right? And so I think I don't want us to. What I think ends up happening is people wanting to, because we want to spotlight the trans issue. There is the danger that we ghettoize it, that it's a separate thing, but in fact it is just an outgrowth of devaluation, and we need to think about that devaluation as a big picture issue.
Absolutely, that's such a great point, and
Definitely.
it kind of comes back to the old idea. I think it's a positive still idea of coalition building, and that we should all be together fighting for these massive changes that need to happen, and not saying, well, the violence against me is worse than the violence against you and you, when it is this trickle-down effect where we're all dealing with a horrific epidemic of gun violence right now in this country, and violence in general and things like that. And how can we come together as human beings? Because I think most people, whether they're LGBTQ, Indian, Asian, Black, they don't want gun violence in their community. They would rather not see their children being shot or their mamas being shot and things like that, right? So that's a really, really wonderful point you made, Charles, about this. Were you going to say something, Freedia?
No.
Okay. Um, so I guess we're almost near the time where I want to wrap things up, but I'm wondering, what do you hope for, each of you, when people see this film? What do you hope it brings to the people, you know, as it's going around to festivals and when it gets released? What do you hope comes from it, and from somebody's viewing of it?
For me, it's spreading light on the issues at hand and the gun violence in New Orleans, and not just in New Orleans, but all around the world, and things that we need to look at as a community, as leaders, to try to get resolutions to fix some of these problems, and to start working on things that can, you know, get our children out of trouble, and get them into community centers and different things that can change their mindset. Like I say, a lot of this stuff starts at home, in the way that we are raised and the people that we're around. And a lot of the things just have to change. And I just want the light to be shined in every direction on the things that need to happen on a national level, on a community level, in schools, you know, in and around, you know, everywhere, because we want our children to be able to live as children and feel like they can be kids and not be harmed. We want them to have safe havens that they can go to school and not think someone's going to come in their school and shoot them. We want them to go to the playground, and we want them to go to the corner store, and we want them to be able to go wherever they choose to go and be kids. So we need this looked at on every level possible.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would also add that I would like for people to see or recognize just how layered it is. It's not a liberal conservative thing. It's not even strictly class, although very much related to class, because it is on some level about fear, right? My fear for my own safety. It is about insecurity. It is about my economic insecurity. It's about my housing insecurity. It's about my food insecurity, and whether or not I feel like I can make it in the world. And if I don't, how do I live a life where I feel safe and secure without protection? Will the state protect me, right? If I call the police, are they more just as likely to kill me as the other person? And in that environment, how do I feel secure? I want people to understand that when we talk about gun violence, we're not just talking about the white kids who go into movie theaters and schools. We're also talking about this community violence where these people don't feel secure, don't feel safe in their own communities, and no one feels that no one can protect them, and that no one's providing for them, and they cannot find, they can't have enough just to survive in a comfortable way. And then and into that goes this whole history of guns and white people and Black people, right? The KKK is formed in part as a organization to take guns from Black people, right? The only people who've ever had guns confiscated in this country by law, state law, is Black people. The only time that the NRA and the Republican people, conservatives, have been on board with gun control is when the Black Panthers showed up in white spaces with guns in California. Yeah. And then everybody was down with gun control because it was about their safety.
Yeah, that's when.
Right? And I think that's the part I hope that the film brings to people, which is stop thinking in this conventional way. Stop thinking it's only about white boys in trench coats. It's about Black people, poor people who cannot find a space in the world where they feel safe and secure.
Yeah. And if I can just add to what both of the panelists said, I always think about the proverb that says, the children who are not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I think about all New Orleans children that way, because there's little opportunity here there's little resources here. And what I mean by here, I mean in our Black communities, because the money is here, it's just not reaching the children that most need it. And so when you think about what I want the takeaway to be, I want people to look at children, specifically Black children, as just that, as children. I want them to see them beyond data points and statistics and look at them as children by any means trying to survive a world and a system that was never set up for their success in the first place. So we're battling issues said on a level, nationally, locally, community-wise, but until we actually look at the heart of the problem, which is the system was never designed for Black people. It was never designed for the least of us to thrive. And this is why oppression is able to manifest itself in the ways that it has, is because that has always been the law of the land, is to enslave us. And when they stop physically enslaving us, they enslaved our minds such that we're killing each other because we don't see any other way. We don't see value in the people that look just like us. And that is the problem. And I just hope that the film opens people's eyes to understanding that, you know, gun violence is indiscriminate. It doesn't have a race or a class or a gender. It is indiscriminate. It affects everybody, but until it affects the right type of people, we won't actually start a conversation around resolution. And it's, you know, across all ethnic groups, but it's just always highlighted when it's minorities killing minorities or when it's poor people killing poor people, as if this is a new conversation. But I think proximity is important. You have to think about proximity, and I think you have to also think about a lack of everything, a lack of access, a lack of resources, a lack of anything is going to perpetuate violence in such a way that makes us uncomfortable. And I will do whatever it takes to bring about change in my community. But I think for us, it starts with a cultural mindset. We have to start to look at each other and see value in each other. We have to look at each other and understand that we are literally all we have. And if we can't stick together, this is never going to work. And so we have to find that village back. We have to bring back the village, like Freedia said earlier, where your neighbor could tell you something and correct you and your mom didn't get upset about it. We have to get back to that, because when we were doing that, we were successful. When we took care of each other, we were successful. And so we have to stop depending on a system that was never designed for our success. And I think that's what I want people to take away from the film. It's not just Black folk killing Black folk. Community violence happens everywhere. But anywhere you have a lack of, you're going to see more of violence. You're going to see it. And so I think that you need to resource communities better, you know, fund neighborhoods better, give people a livable wage. And then I think you'll see a decrease in the stuff that you don't desire to see in your neighborhoods. I mean, I hope that's the takeaway from this. A lack of opportunity breeds gun violence. It breeds community violence.
Thank you all for that. Well, my hope is that maybe in 5 or 10 years, there can be a part 2 of this that has a lot of change, and we see Devin doing well, and maybe the community's doing better and things like that. You know, fingers crossed, and you know, and I hope that I hope that, I don't know, has there been any progress with finding your brother's killer, Freedia?
Not yet.
So maybe that can be part of the part 2 too, I hope, one day.
And you know, lastly, I think that everybody in position that is leaders, meaning people that kids respect, that they can get through to them, that they can talk to them, those are the people that we need to step up. You know, just, you know, as an example, there was a guy that was in front of the store yesterday and had a big gun with a clip at the end of it. And it's hanging out his pants as I'm walking into my corner store. And he just like walking around the front of the store. There's tons of kids going in and out the store, tons of people. And I talked to the guy in the store and I'm like, I don't feel safe coming to my local neighborhood store. And he's asking me why. And I'm like, the guy outside with a big old gun. But me knowing the guy, I talked to him and told him to put the gun up. And he respected me and did that. So you need people that people respect and that people call themselves leaders and role models and icons and these rappers and these singers. You need these people to step up and to talk to these kids and talk to people that they can get through to and try to help change their mindset. And, you know, once I was pulling off from the store yesterday, I told him, I said, that's much better. You know, as I'm pulling off and I didn't see the gun anymore. And I'm like, anything could happen. The police could roll up, you going to jail for 20 years for having a gun with a big old clip hanging out your pocket. Just for what? To show off in front of the corner store? So it's about, even if you think you're scared, it's about trying to get through to these kids and through to the community as a whole. And I'm, like I said, I step out on faith. That's all I can do.
It's amazing. And I appreciate you doing it. And I think this film is going to have a big impact on other people like you that can have a voice and can be leaders. And maybe you're going to be the leader to show them that they need to step up in their communities too. So again, thank you all for being a part of it and for making this, having the courage to make it, Freedia, being a part of it. So, you know, making films like this isn't easy at all. Isn't at all. You know,
it wasn't. Just reliving all of it and going through it, and just, you know, it was very important though. Me and Dr. Wyatt, we worked really hard to, you know, try to reach the children and try to get every possible situation to get them some resources. And so it's just important to us as, you know, community leaders to want to see better for our kids and for our community. So it wasn't that hard. It was for a greater cause and for a purpose that will be even greater later for generations to come. So we are very proud to have done this film, and we are very proud that Charles became a part of this film. And for World of Wonder and Chris McKim and all of the people, the peacekeepers and all of the people involved in this film, it was very touching. It was very touching for me, just having to relive a lot of things that, you know, personal things and people that I've lost. And but I was very grateful that I did it. And I think that it will have some type of change and make a difference in the world. We just need to get it into the right hands. We need to get the right conversations going. We need to get the right people moving in the right directions. We need to put pressure on our leaders and our government. And we just got to keep praying and pushing. That's my motto. Keep praying and pushing.
That's awesome. Well, I'm gonna leave it at that. And thank you all so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. And for making it once again. I can't say it enough. We're really proud to be showing it at Outfest.